Greetings builders, Daniel here and welcome to another top 3 video where every week I choose a topic and show you my 3 favorite builds of it. Today's theme is the sword builds, and if you wanna try any of those you can find links for POBs and complete guides in the video description. And if this video helps you, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much and let's get into it! The first build of our selection is the huge ultimate sweep slayer with the duelist class. Instead of many small hits like Cyclone, Sweep deals few big hits with an immense area of effect. To visit the pros of this build, I would start with its boss damage. Sweep deals really heavy hits that are capable of killing guardians with only 4 or 5 spins of your sword. I assure you that this is going to make you feel like a boss. This build also has a great clear speed because of the huge area of effect that almost covers the whole screen. Now to visit the cons, I would start with survivability. You need to stay still and very close to enemies, what leaves you in a vulnerable position. I recommend you to always stay a few levels higher than the maps you're in and invest in your survivability. As for budget, this build is cheap. You can get it destroying early in game maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. For clear speed, I'll give this one 9 out of 10. You deal devastating hits with huge area of effect, and I only took 1 point out because you need to stand still to attack, and the attack speed is not the best. The boss damage is incredible and deserves 10 out of 10. Even though you do just a few hits per second, they are so powerful they are going to kill guardians with less than 5 attacks. For this survivability, I'll give it 8 out of 10. This build has many defensive layers such as permanent fortify, armor, evasion and spell suppression, but you need to be careful because while attacking you're always standing still and in a vulnerable position. Next we have a build so fast that it's hard to follow with your eyes, the Flicker Strike Slayer with the Duelist class. This build uses Terminus S to sustain the frenzy charges needed for you to keep flickering. It's a great and simple Flicker Strike build for beginners. To visit the pros of this build, I would have to start with its clear speed. Look at that, this is just insanely fast. It also counts with an awesome boss damage and instant life leech. And of course, Flicker builds are just super cool. Now to list the cons, I would start with the fact that you're always very close to enemies, which puts you in a vulnerable position. Another issue is that you have little control over your character, making it hard on bosses where you need to mind your position or attack the right enemy. As for budget, you can get it destroying early in game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 120 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You need only one mandatory unique item for this build, the Terminus S sword that keeps your frenzy charges up even while flickering. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10, and I don't even need to say anything, just take a look at the gameplay and you have to agree with me. The boss damage is great and deserves 9 out of 10. This build can easily deal many millions of damage per second, it's just great to kill big bosses like that. Now for the survivability, I'll only give it 8 out of 10. Even though this build still has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion and spell suppression, I had to take 2 points out for the same reason as I did with the Cyclone Slayer. Since you're always very close to enemies, you're always in a vulnerable position. Finally, in first place we have this amazing Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class. Now with the new melee buffs, many of you were asking for the update of this build, and here you go, it was an absolute delight to play this one. Now it feels really powerful all the time, almost as we used to feel on bosses with the Ancestral Totems. And now we even have the reworked banners for the extra DPS during boss fights. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done, but when you're leveling your character you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build, you get stun immunity with cluster duels, but not everyone can afford them right away. If that's your case, or if you're just having problems with stuns sooner, do this simple trick of picking those evasion nodes and this mastery. Believe me, it helps a lot. As for budget, you can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortable advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its pace. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS, that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. For this survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves almost 80,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even some instant life leech. Now, with the huge area of effect from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think about those builds? Please take a second to tell me in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!